Kevin Stefanski's greatest asset used to be his composure. But in the eyes of many Browns players, that calm has curdled into something colder: emotional detachment. In a moment meant for leadership and connection, his steady demeanor now reads as a refusal to engage. As tensions erupted behind closed doors, players questioned whether Stefanski still had the locker room, or ever truly did. What unfolded with Myles Garrett wasn't mutiny. It was a reckoning. Inside those walls, composure is no longer enough.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The confrontation exposed just how fragile the Browns' foundation has become, with trust splintered and the emotional disconnect between coach and team turning into a full-blown crisis. Stefanski's inability to meet the players where they are, especially in moments of vulnerability, has left a gap too wide to ignore. It started as just another painful loss. Another Sunday gone wrong, another scoreboard that didn't go the Browns' way. But what happened in the locker room after that game at MetLife Stadium wasn't just about frustration. It was a breaking point. This was the moment the Cleveland Browns' internal fractures went from whispers to full-on collapse. The tension that had been bubbling quietly finally exploded. And it didn't come from a bench warmer or a depth guy. It came from the face of the franchise, Myles Garrett. The All-Pro, the supposed anchor, the player everyone expected to lead with composure. He didn't just get upset. He called out Kevin Stefanski directly. And he didn't hold back. Garrett, one of the most respected figures in that building, accused his own head coach of lacking emotion, lacking connection, and worst of all, lacking leadership. His words weren't just angry. They were deliberate, calculated, emotional. And they hit hard because they came from someone who had always seemed above the drama. But even Garrett had had enough. He said the team had lost its passion, that the identity was gone, that playing football had become robotic, that no one seemed to believe anymore, not in the plan, not in the locker room, not in the guy at the helm. And when Garrett said it, no one stepped in to stop him. No one defended Stefanski. There was no shouting match, no rallying cries, just silence. Awkward, deafening silence. That silence said everything. Because when your star player unloads on the head coach in front of the team, and not a single person comes to that coach's defense, that's not drama. That's a mutiny. The trust between the locker room and Stefanski wasn't just damaged. It was broken. Players had already been feeling it, questioning why things felt so disconnected, why the fire was missing, why the same calm, collected energy from Stefanski that once felt stable now felt cold and indifferent. Analytical leadership works when the team is winning. But in the middle of a slump, it reads as emotionally checked out. And the moment this blew up, the media ran with it. What started as an in-house blow-up turned into a public spectacle. Headlines poured in. Commentators circled. Reports emerged about leadership dysfunction, about players losing faith, about a locker room that had been barely holding together before this implosion ripped it wide open. Stefanski and the Browns' front office tried to spin it. They projected unity. They gave calm, rehearsed answers. But no one was buying it, not after Garrett posted cryptic messages on social media, hinting that the foundation was cracking. That kind of post doesn't come from nowhere. And the on-field product? It showed the damage. The Browns didn't look like a team bouncing back. They looked like a group of individuals trying to finish the season without looking each other in the eye. You could see the frustration bleeding into every snap. The breakdowns in communication. The lack of urgency. The body language that screamed, "We're not okay." And the worst part? This isn't new. This wasn't just one ugly game or a one-time confrontation. What Garrett said echoed something that's been building under the surface for weeks, even months. A recurring pattern in Cleveland: start with hype, build with talent, then collapse under the weight of internal dysfunction. Again and again, Garrett's outburst didn't cause the cracks. It exposed them, loudly. He didn't just speak for himself. He spoke for everyone who's been quietly watching this team drift. For everyone tired of the emotionless press conferences, the uninspired play calling, and the lack of identity on the field, Stefanski, by all accounts, is calm, composed. But that calm now reads like detachment, like the fire isn't there. And when the locker room is already losing faith, the last thing they want to see is a coach who seems more concerned with optics than with passion. Supporters of Stefanski will argue he's trying to hold things together, that he's staying measured in a storm. But the reality is, the team doesn't feel it. And if players don't feel their coach, they stop playing for him. What we're seeing now is the fallout. The team's unity is gone. The confidence is gone. And the results are starting to reflect that emotional collapse. Because in professional football, when the emotional core is fractured, everything else falls apart fast. And now the questions are getting louder. Is this fixable? Can Stefanski recover the locker room, rebuild the trust, and reignite the fire? Or is this just the beginning of the end for his run in Cleveland? Garrett's confrontation has created a clear turning point. The team is no longer just struggling. They're unraveling. And unless something dramatic happens, something real, not scripted PR, the Browns are headed for yet another rebuild, fueled not by talent issues, but by leadership failure. Players are questioning the team's purpose. The fans see it. The media is dissecting it. And it all points back to one core issue: the disconnect between the head coach and the emotional needs of his team. This is no longer about football IQ or scheme. It's about human connection. It's about leadership that inspires belief, not just strategy. And right now, that's missing. Every player in that locker room knows what it feels like to be on a team that believes in each other, that believes in the mission, that feels united. But when belief turns to doubt, and doubt turns into disconnection, you're not a team anymore. You're just 53 guys in the same jersey. And that's exactly what the Browns have become. The question is, can they find their way back? There's still time left in the season. Technically, mathematically, the Browns can still fight. But emotionally, that's a much harder battle to win. It takes accountability, honesty, vulnerability, traits that Stefanski hasn't shown publicly, traits that Garrett just forced the team to confront. So what now? Do the Browns double down on their calm, professional messaging and hope it blows over? Or do they actually address the real issue, the leadership crisis that's been corroding this locker room from the inside? Because if they don't deal with this now, it won't just define this season. It will define the next 5 years. The foundation is cracked. And it's not because of talent. It's because leadership without connection isn't leadership at all. Garrett's outburst wasn't about ego. It was a demand for accountability, for purpose, for a reason to believe again. And until someone in that building answers that call, this team won't recover. And if you've been watching this all unfold, we want to know what you think. Can the Browns fix this locker room disaster before the season completely collapses? Or has the damage already been done? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's talk about it. Make sure to like this video if you're keeping up with the madness, share it with someone who needs to see what's really happening in Cleveland, and subscribe for more breakdowns on the biggest meltdowns in sports. Because when the Browns locker room says we want him gone, you know we'll be here to cover every second of the fallout. And now we're here. The Cleveland Browns are officially living through yet another organizational crisis. But this one hits differently. It's not about a quarterback controversy or a bad draft pick or even a blown playoff shot. This time, it's a full-on identity collapse, triggered from within. The trigger? Myles Garrett didn't whisper behind closed doors. He didn't hint at problems through vague comments. He stood up in the middle of the locker room and challenged Kevin Stefanski to his face. And not just about strategy. This wasn't about play calling or game management. Garrett went after the one thing a coach can't afford to lose: the emotional connection to his players. He accused Stefanski of being cold, disconnected, empty of the passion that turns players into believers. He called out what everyone had been feeling but hadn't dared to say out loud. The Browns were going through the motions, and no one was rallying them back together. That one confrontation pulled the mask off everything the organization was trying to keep buried. Suddenly, the locker room wasn't just tense, it was exposed. Silent. Divided. And the silence that followed Garrett's words might have been louder than the words themselves. No one backed the coach. That's the moment this stopped being about one outburst and became a full-blown revolt. And what made it worse? This wasn't new. Garrett's explosion wasn't the beginning. It was the breaking point after weeks, months of simmering frustration. The team had been fading emotionally for a while. The fire wasn't there. The edge was gone. On paper, the Browns had the tools. But on the field, you saw hesitation, a lack of chemistry, players walking to the sideline with blank stares. The belief had already eroded. But when a player like Garrett says it out loud in front of the team, and no one steps in to say, "Hold on, that's not fair," that's when the leadership is truly in question. That's when the coach's voice stops being heard. What followed wasn't just a media storm. It was confirmation of everything Garrett had said. The Browns' public image collapsed in real time. Reporters dove in. Sources inside the building started talking. The headlines wrote themselves: fractured locker room, leadership crisis, emotional disconnect, Stefanski's grip slipping. And yet, from the front office, the same tired strategy. Control the narrative, project calm, deny dysfunction. But it wasn't working. Because no press conference can erase the body language on game day. The performances didn't lie. The Browns looked flat, lost, disconnected. A team with talent shouldn't look like that. The more Stefanski tried to present composure, the more that composure started to feel hollow. His signature stoicism, the thing that once made him look poised, now made him look absent. Like he was managing the team from a spreadsheet instead of the sideline. And inside the locker room, that perception turned toxic. Players don't need speeches full of buzzwords. They need to feel like their coach is in the fight with them, not observing from the balcony. Garrett's frustration wasn't about one loss. It was about weeks of feeling like the emotional leadership wasn't showing up. And he said what the team had been afraid to say: passion and belief aren't optional. They're everything. The fallout has been brutal. Reports started surfacing that team cohesion was gone, that players were tuning out, that practices fell off, with an atmosphere that had gone from tense to just plain empty. You could feel it in post-game interviews, where words felt lifeless. You could see it in the games themselves, where energy was missing and players weren't even pretending to hide the frustration anymore. This wasn't just a hiccup. It was a full-blown unraveling. And still, there were attempts to contain the damage. Stefanski continued showing up with the same tone, the same cool responses. He talked about professionalism, focus, bouncing back. But meanwhile, Garrett was posting cryptic warnings on social media, hinting that the foundation of the team was breaking. Not shaky, breaking. And if anyone thought that was just an emotional overreaction, they haven't been paying attention to the Browns for the last decade. Because let's be honest, this is not a one-off event. This is the Browns falling into a pattern they've never figured out how to break. Start the season with expectations, show flashes of promise, then let internal dysfunction eat the team alive. What's new this time is the clarity. Garrett's confrontation ripped off the Band-Aid. This time, it's not about bad luck or tough breaks. It's about leadership failing to meet the emotional needs of a team that desperately needs a reason to believe. And Garrett isn't just another guy in the locker room. He's the guy. If he's done pretending everything's fine, then the rest of the roster is definitely not pretending either. That's why this moment matters more than anything Stefanski has faced since taking the job. This isn't just about his job security. It's about whether the locker room even respects him enough to keep playing for him. Because once a team emotionally disconnects from its head coach, it's over. And the Browns are teetering dangerously close to that edge. You can feel the shift happening in real time. Players aren't responding. There's no urgency. The team's chemistry is off, their effort looks inconsistent, and even the play execution looks like it's missing a heartbeat. It's like everyone's going through the motions, waiting for someone to take control, and no one is. And now, the Browns are in a place they've been far too often, wondering not how to salvage a season, but how to salvage a culture. Because that's what this is about now. Culture. Identity. Belief. The things that don't show up in box scores, but decide everything. Stefanski's calm, analytical style may have once been the answer to chaos, but it's not the answer to a locker room desperate for emotion, for connection, for a leader they feel aligned with. And right now, the only person giving them that emotional honesty is Garrett. That's a problem. Because the moment your player becomes the emotional leader and your coach fades into the background, you're already deep in a crisis. And the worst thing Cleveland can do right now is pretend otherwise. This isn't something they can fix with a few team meetings and a PR reset. The cracks are too visible. The locker room is too exposed. If this doesn't get handled urgently and authentically, the Browns risk losing not just games, but their entire identity as a franchise. Because this team was built to win now. The talent is there. The experience is there. But without leadership that unites and inspires, none of it matters. And Stefanski? He's now standing at a fork in the road. One path requires real change. A total shift in how he connects with the team. A willingness to step down from the emotional sidelines and start leading in the trenches. The other path? It's the slow, inevitable fade out. The quiet collapse of a team that once believed, and now doesn't. So what's it going to be? Will Stefanski evolve and face the uncomfortable truth? Will he confront the fact that his leadership style might no longer work for this locker room? Or will he stay the course, hoping to outlast the storm with more composure and silence? Because let's be real, that hasn't worked so far. The Browns still have time left on the clock, but not much. And what they choose to do next will determine whether this season becomes a turning point, or just another chapter in a long, painful saga of Cleveland collapse. This is where the Browns season stops being about football and starts being about survival. Not just playoff survival. Not just trying to claw back into the standings. But survival of who this team is, what they stand for, and whether this locker room can actually function as a unit again. Because the moment trust is gone, real trust, not the kind you talk about at press conferences, you're no longer a team. You're just a group of professionals doing a job. And that's exactly how the Browns have looked since the MetLife collapse. Disjointed, disinterested, and disconnected. Every week since that confrontation has felt heavier. You can see it in the players' faces. The sideline body language is tense. No one's laughing between drives. No one's hyping each other up. There's no spark. And on the field, the timing is off. Communication is breaking down. Defensive coverages that used to be tight are now full of holes. Offensively, the rhythm is clunky at best. You can blame play calling. You can nitpick execution. But all of that is surface level. The root issue is this. The team doesn't trust the leadership anymore. They don't feel connected. And without that, you don't win in the NFL. Period. Garrett tried to force the issue by calling it out. He brought the truth to the center of the room, and now everyone has to sit with it. There's no ignoring it. No pretending it was just heat of the moment frustration. The performances after that incident only made it more clear. This wasn't a bad day. This is a broken culture. And the scary part? The front office still hasn't really addressed it. Publicly, they've circled the wagons. Repeated the same lines. We believe in our coach. The locker room is strong. We're focused on football. But those words aren't lining up with what's happening on the field, or online, or behind closed doors. Garrett's social media posts, subtle but sharp, don't sound like someone who feels heard. They sound like someone who's still waiting for real change. And if he's not feeling it, what do you think is happening with the rest of the team? Because what the Browns are dealing with isn't a PR problem. It's a trust problem. And that's something no soundbite can fix. Right now, everything hinges on whether Stefanski is willing or able to adapt. Because the version of leadership he brought into this season clearly isn't working anymore. His even-keeled demeanor might have worked in calmer waters. But this team is in emotional crisis. They don't need stoicism. They need leadership. Real, visible, emotionally present leadership. They need to feel like their coach is just as invested in this team's heart as he is in their third down efficiency. And until they feel that, the losing, the detachment, the spiral, it's all going to continue. It's why so many fans have started asking the question out loud. Is Kevin Stefanski the right man for this job anymore? Not because he's a bad coach. Not because he doesn't understand football. But because the connection is gone. And in the NFL, once the locker room tunes out, the coach doesn't get that frequency back. That's the brutal reality of this league. You get one shot to keep your players emotionally aligned. When that's broken, everything else follows. That's what we're seeing with Cleveland. A team that's falling apart not because of a lack of talent, but because the leadership has stopped resonating. And that should terrify the organization more than anything else. Because talent you can draft. Strategy you can adjust. But once belief dies, once your locker room stops believing in the guy at the front of the room, that's the kind of fracture that can take years to fix. The Browns are staring that future in the face right now. They're dangerously close to wasting another season filled with elite-level talent. They've got one of the most dominant defensive players in the league telling them directly what's wrong. And instead of leaning into it, they've tried to downplay it. Like it'll go away if they keep saying the right things in pressers. But it's not going away. Because the issues Garrett raised, passion, belief, emotional connection, leadership, those aren't surface-level gripes. Those are foundational. And unless someone in that building steps up and takes ownership of that, the entire thing risks collapsing. It won't be a dramatic, mid-season firing or a trade deadline blow-up. It'll be something more subtle and more dangerous. A slow, painful erosion of everything they were trying to build. One loss at a time. One player checking out at a time. One moment of silence in the locker room at a time. Because the players know. They always know. They feel when leadership is slipping. And if no one fills the vacuum, it's over. This is where the Browns are now. Staring down a choice that will define more than just this season. It'll define whether this team learns from its history or repeats it. Whether they choose accountability and connection, or cling to calmness and denial until there's nothing left to salvage. If Garrett's outburst taught us anything, it's this: emotion matters. Passion matters. Belief matters. And right now, the Browns are running low on all three. So where do you land on all of this? Is Stefanski too far gone? Was Garrett right to speak out the way he did? Or can this team still pull it together before the cracks become permanent? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this story is still unfolding. Like this video if you're riding the roller coaster with us. Share it with someone who's been screaming at their screen all season. And make sure you're subscribed. Because the Browns drama, it's far from over.